I didn't really see any politicians in Canada yet, to be honest with you, that were courageous enough to stand up against this Israeli occupation. And any of the protests that I've went and attended in, or I organized, or any protests that I've seen through social media in Canada, I have not seen one politician till now speak out and stand up and support the Palestinians. I see religious clergy from the Muslims, from the Jews, from the Christians.
Exactly.
Yes, I've seen that, but I have not seen any politicians, unfortunately.
Thank you, Firas. We also have Tony Gosling with us as well. Mr. Gosling, investigative journalist from London, thank you for joining us. Now, Mr. Gosling, Israel's ground attacks analysts are saying that yielded lots of bang but little success. Your thoughts on the 2 tries by the Israeli army so far, which Hamas says it pushed back the troops on both occasions and inflicted heavy losses on the Israeli war machine?
Well, anyone that studies military history will know that, and tactics, strategy, this sort of thing, will know that an assault through an urban area is always very, very difficult. My own uncle, he was doing clearance of towns and villages during the Second World War as the main front line advanced, to actually have to clear out, and sometimes it took weeks to clear out small units of Nazi resistance in those towns, because it's a very, very easy place to defend. And so you end up with a lot of people who are doing the advancing and attacking dying compared to the number of defenders. It's a very, very difficult job to do, and of course it's a much more difficult job than simply bombing innocent civilians from an aircraft from the air, or lobbing in artillery, firing in those ways. So it's a very difficult military job to do, and it may be that the IDF is simply not up to it. It's been used to doing a kind of policing role over the last few decades in terms of policing civilians. And it may be not able to do it. But I think I'm very proud actually today to be British, because we had another massive demonstration in central London, right outside the Houses of Parliament. And the aerial photographs were amazing. Literally a sea of people right across the River Thames, right into Parliament Square and into South London. The estimates are over, and again, for the 3rd week running, over 100,000 people on London streets in sympathy. And we, in a way, what this is doing is, it's reminding us all how far away our so-called democratically elected politicians are from the feelings of London and from the feelings of the British people. And it's lovely to it's actually 20 years since the massive anti-Iraq war demonstrations in London, that we have seen these kind of turnout for demonstrations on London streets. And the reason for that, I think, is, number one, the Israel lobby in the UK has been working very hard on all of the parties, but particularly the 2 main political parties, the Conservatives and Labour here, with, for example, the Shadow Chancellor is one of the top people in Labour Friends of Israel. The Labour leader, Keir Starmer, who's supposed to be in opposition, he is actually a big supporter of Israel, and there have been people calling on him to resign because he's been supporting, in words, actually he's supposed to be a human rights lawyer, but he's been supporting the siege that the Israelis have imposed on Gaza, which of course is illegal under international law. It's a war crime. And so the other thing of the 2, so there's the political lobby, there's also the media lobbying, and that is much more subtle because it's more behind the scenes. And on my program yesterday, we exposed some of the money that Israel is paying to social media influencers to put out pro-Israel, because many of them have actually said, no, we're not going to do this, and put out posts to that effect. But more important, I think, is the mainstream press. As many people know, Rupert Murdoch and his newspapers will do almost anything for money. And ever since this started, they have been 100% behind the Israeli efforts. And so I think we can assume that there is money changing hands there too. So the Israelis are hoping to buy off the media, not just the traditional media, but social media and influencers, plus celebrities, this sort of thing. And this is the way they hope to win the war, by literally hasbara, they call it, by using propaganda effects through the media. And the effect of this, ultimately, is that many of the Western leaders just don't feel able, through all this lobbying and groupthink and political pressure, financial pressure, possibly even blackmail, to speak out in these international forums against these Israeli policies. And what that does is it in a way, it just gives a little bit more impetus to the Israelis to go even further. So we do need to see, it's really important that the United Nations yesterday, the vote against the, for a ceasefire is really good. But this needs to happen at the international level as well with the Security Council. So every time one of these Western leaders vetoes a motion calling for a ceasefire, this actually gives the Israeli Defense Force, so I'm not talking here about Israelis or Zionists, I'm talking here about the greater Israel bloc, these far-right bloc, which is now in charge of the political decisions and the policies in Israel, which are causing all these war crimes. And it seems as if they're doubling down, doing things even worse day after day, because the message from their so-called friends, the Americans, the British, the Europeans, has been actually a message of encouragement to Israel rather than telling them to stop.
That's right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. Mr. Firas Al-Najim, a human rights activist from Toronto, and also Mr. Tony Gosling, investigative journalist from London. Thank you, gentlemen.